Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
My name is Clint. I'm an alcoholic. And I'd like to thank Faith for asking me to come over. I understand she's since been voted out of office. I don't know what that means. It's nice to be here. And I'd like to welcome you if you're new to Alcoholics Anonymous. Those early days in AA are, I think, almost as confusing as the final days of our drinking. Not quite. I got sober over in Glendale. They didn't have, it's been a while now, and in those days they did not have any hospital programs to speak of for people like us. There weren't insurance benefits that included that, and so you just went to AA or didn't go. There was a place out in the valley run by a guy named Ron Shire that was kind of a detox place. They called it Shire's Dryer. And you could... he had kind of a little spin dry deal out there, and we cycled in and out of there. Or you went to County Hospital, or you went to Camarillo, or you went to the jails. And I did mostly jails and parks. I lived in a little garage over there with 3 other guys. And it was a double garage. I don't want you to think we were crowded or anything. And I had a little room. It was cut up into 4 rooms, and I had one of those little rooms. And I would sometimes wake up in my little room in the garage, and sometimes I would wake up in jail. And occasionally, when I was still a proud possessor of a car, I would wake up in or near the car. And it all seemed about the same to me. It's kind of like we pay a tab to do our drinking. And we never really look at it so much in the way that I would describe it tonight, but it's almost like you walk into the bar one night and the guy says, "You going to drink tonight?" And you say, "Yeah." "How much are the drinks?" And he says, "Well, it's $3 a drink, and tonight it'll cost you your job." And you say, "Really, my job?" "Yeah, you're going to drink tonight, it'll cost you your job." "My job?" "Yeah, you want to drink?" "Well, yeah, I want to drink. I can get another job, I just... One night you walk in, they say, "You going to drink tonight?" "Yeah, it's $3 a drink, and tonight it'll cost you your car." "My car?" Now we're getting a little closer to home. In fact, it was my home. "Well, I can get another car." One night you walk in, "You going to drink tonight?" "Yeah, well, tonight it'll cost you $3 a drink and your wife." "Okay." Some decisions are easier to make than others. Somebody said not long ago that there's nothing sadder than seeing a guy coming to AA after having lost everything but his wife. It's got her there, and you're not a happy lady. And so we come here with whatever it is that we come here with, having paid whatever price that we've paid. And sometimes we get, it's not clear immediately what the problem is, what these meetings really are all about. Because for a little while it feels like it's about, the problem is alcohol here. And then when we realize it's not alcohol that we're addressing here, we think, well, maybe the problem that we're talking about here is quitting drinking. And it isn't that either. Because alcohol isn't in the picture anymore, and quitting drinking isn't an issue anymore, and yet we continue to meet here. And the problem really that we're talking about at these meetings and that book addresses is the problem of how you live comfortably without drinking. That's the problem. How you live your life in such a way that you don't have to go back there again, because every one of us many, many times went back there again after we told ourselves that we would not do that. I worked very hard at quitting drinking. I got to be very good at it. I could quit 4 or 5 times in a morning. This is the last half pint I'm going to need. I'm a good quitter. And if quitting were really the problem, I would not need the meetings anymore, because I have got that problem handled. I know how to quit. I know how to drink, and I know how to quit. The thing that I have found in Alcoholics Anonymous is not how to drink and not how to quit, but how to live my life in such a way that it is not necessary for me to start drinking again. And it's really important to know what somebody told me a story a while ago that I liked. I think the guy that they were talking about must be an alcoholic. He happened to look out into his backyard one day, and he saw his dog out there, and the dog had the neighbor's rabbit in its mouth. And he didn't want any trouble with the neighbor, so he went running out there and he grabbed that rabbit, but it was all bloody and it was dead. But he brought it inside and he washed it off and he blow-dried the rabbit, and he took it next door and stuck it back in that cage next door. Sneaked it back in there, and about a week later he saw his neighbor out in front. And he said, "How you doing?" The neighbor said, "I'm doing good." He said he couldn't leave it alone. So he said, "How's your rabbit?" And the guy said, "Funny thing about that rabbit, it died about a month ago and I buried it, but now I see it's back in its cage back there." You know, it's kind of nice to know what the problem is, right? And so I didn't know what the problem was when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I got here because a bail bondsman brought me to AA. He had bailed me out many times. That guy he'd given me a job. I was working for him selling encyclopedias door to door when I got to AA. And I was living in that garage over in Glendale, and I was waking up in the Glendale drunk tank as often as anybody I knew. And I had warrants out for bad checks, and a warrant out for a failure to appear, and there was a warrant out for not paying child support, and I had myself a high old time around that town. And sometimes it seems bad. At first time or two you wake up in jail, it seems like it's just so humiliating. And it's astonishing how quickly we get used to waking up in jail. After a while, it's no big deal. After a while, you really know that the alcoholic is that guy in the next cell. It isn't you. After a while, you know that at least when you wake up in jail, you're not going to have to start worrying about a drink right away. You know, you kind of calm. You wake up in the garage and you just need a drink real bad. And when you wake up in jail, you kind of relax. You know you're not going to get a drink. It lends a certain stability to your day. You know where you're going to spend that day. You're not going to get arrested. A lot of things that come out of that. A lot of turmoil about waking up in the garage. I had one of these $11 a week rooms with a sticky linoleum floor and a little bulb that came out of the ceiling on a cord. There was a sink in that room. There was a toilet out someplace. You don't need the toilet. You got the sink. I never did find that toilet. I had smelled in that room. God, it was just... And I lived and I died in that little room. I had sounds in there. I had a little radio. I could never get it to turn itself off. Even after I unplugged it, I could still hear that damn radio. There was a committee that met outside the door of my little room every couple of days. I could hear them out there talking about me. And I'd go yank that door open and they'd be gone. I never saw them. I mean, we have sort of a rich reality, you know. I woke up under the bed one morning and there was a rat over in the corner. Big guy. And I looked at him and he looked at me. He scared me to death. We both knew he was going to win if it came to that. I stared at that rat and then I'd pass out, I'd black out, and I'd wake up and he'd still be there. I'd pass out again, and there was just enough light coming under the door that I could see him over there watching me. And I came around again about, I don't know when it was, but there was enough light now, the first light of day, that I looked again, and that rat in some way had turned into a pair of socks laying over there in the corner. And that's how it was. I was held hostage by a pair of socks all night long one night, afraid to move. And out of all of that, a bail bondsman looked at me one day and he said, I got to take you someplace. And I didn't know where he was going to take me. I thought he might take me to Camarillo, and I kind of thought maybe that'd be a good place for me to go. I thought maybe they'll find that brain tumor up there. I thought maybe he'd take me to county hospital, which was, in those days, they gave you big jars of pills if you went down there. Stayed a few days. Thought maybe he'd take me to back to jail. No big deal. I didn't know where he was going to take me, but I knew I was in trouble, and so there was talk about the phrase we stood at the turning point. I stood at a turning point, and I had seen him early that morning, and he said, I'm going to take you someplace today, and I said, well, I'll come back about noon, and he said, okay, and he found me in the apartment of a friend of mine, and he walked in there, and he said, are you ready to go? And I said, okay. And he brought me to you. He took me to that club over there on Glendale Boulevard above the Laundry. It was on Central Avenue in those days, I guess. And nothing in my life has been the same since that time. I didn't even know where I was. People were sitting in the back of the room around tables like this, 12 or 13 of you. And I knew by the time I left there that you were calling yourselves Alcoholics Anonymous. I did not know that I would be able to stay. I had no idea that I would ever want to stay. I mean, it doesn't really fire you up much when you get dropped into that kind of a situation, because there were just a bunch of people sitting around talking about being sober, and they had the steps on the wall, and I looked at those steps, and they didn't seem like a big deal to me. I liked the people. I liked that they were, something about the fact that they were talking about God and smoking impressed me. Made me feel better about it, because I'd grown up in a very religious home, and smoking was so bad that nobody could possibly smoke and think about God at the same time. Or dancing was a sin. Movies were bad. My mother wanted me to be an evangelist. Yeah. Wanted me to go to Prairie Bible Institute in Western Canada. Be an evangelist. And I had no interest in that. No. Of course, I didn't know then what I know now, that work that evangelists do has a certain color to it sometimes. That they're... I may have a calling for that. But I was mad at my mother by that time, and I wasn't going to do anything that made her happy. But we heard a lot about church. I sat on the back row of the Church of the Air in Billings, Montana, and tried hard to keep from getting pulled down to the front during the sermon. That minister would just lay the wood to them, and people would go down to the front to get saved. I got somehow hammered into going to get baptized early one spring in the Yellowstone River outside of Billings. The water was about 33 degrees. I remember we got, I didn't find God that day, I'll tell you. Didn't find very much of anything for about 3 days, as I recall. That water was chilly. But I was left with these notions about God when I came in here that wasn't very inviting. I think more out of the questions I was asked than out of anything specific I was told. Because my mom used to say, "Where will you spend eternity?" And I go, "Oh, God." Or, "Have you found God yet?" "No, I haven't found God." Her all-time favorite, "What will you do when you meet your Maker?" I go, "Jesus. I don't know what I'll do. Apologize, maybe. Huh? I don't know." I mean, she was into that. And so it has its effect, and you kind of push it all down, and you lose touch with it, and I pushed the caring down out of my life, and I just got myself a good attitude going. From the time I was 7 years old, I had a snotty attitude. Decided I didn't love my mother. Decided she didn't love me is really what the problem. You know what I do with that? Any kid does it. "You don't love me? Really? You don't love me? Great. I don't love you." Yeah, and off you'll go. And I never broke. My mother died when I was 14. I never did break. I never said, "I love you, Mama." And I loved her. I really loved her. And I couldn't even admit it to myself. And when I was 16 years old, as I think Celeste said she was 16 when she started drinking, somebody offered me vodka and orange juice after a football game in high school. I loved it. I loved it. From the beginning, I knew that there would be a special thing between me and alcohol. It's peace of mind. It's chemical peace of mind, but who cares? I loved it. And from the time I was 16 until the time I was 29 and that bail bondsman brought me to you, I did everything I could to drink all I could. And so I've been here for a while now. I'm 53. Next week, next Tuesday, I'll celebrate 24 years of participation in Alcoholics Anonymous, 24 years of sobriety, and I will call that guy, that bail bondsman, next week, as I have for every year on my birthday, and thank him. Thank him. I am so grateful that he brought me to you. And he must be as surprised as I am that this thing works so well. It works better than anything I ever dreamed of. And I know he's surprised, because I call him up, I say, "Don, it's Clint Hodges," and there's just that little moment of hesitancy on his part. And he says, "Yeah, Clint, where are you?" And I tell him it's another year's gone by. And I thank him, because he was the guy that brought me out of all that confusion and threw me in your midst, and I've never gotten away. That was in July of 66, and my birthday's in August, so I horsed around with it for a while. But the last time I had a drink was the 14th of August, 1966, and that surprises me, because I was a bad drunk. And what is also surprising to me is the quality of my life today, because I love my life today. I love it. I love my life today. I love sobriety. I love my membership in Alcoholics Anonymous. I love the people that I run with. I love this thing that has happened to me. I was selling encyclopedias door to door when I got here, and I wasn't doing a real good job at it. I was living in that garage, and after a while I got out of that garage, moved into a little apartment. After a while I got out of the encyclopedia business and started selling imprinted ballpoint pens, which is pretty exciting career stuff, I'll tell you. When I was 9 months sober, I got my license to drive a car back. Big day in my life. Big deal. I went back to jail when I was 5 months sober for a day because I'd written so many bad checks when I was drinking, and they came to warrant, and I had to go down there, turn myself in. I had some kind of a theory, I guess, that somehow, well, maybe it'll go through. Who knows, you know. That account might still be open. It could happen. I got a little job selling dictating equipment. Had a salary attached to it. Boy, I like that. I got a little job after that selling carpet. And now I got 3.5 years of sobriety, and then 4 and 4.5. I moved out to this end of town. I got a sponsor. I wrote an inventory. I did a 5th step. I started sponsoring people. I didn't like much my job. I did it. It took me several years to consistently put 5 days together. I'd go to work for 4 days and give myself a meritorious day off. I'd do 3 days and take a day and go back and do another. I didn't have my heart in it. Developing the capacity to put myself into a job was difficult for me. It did not happen quickly. A lot of things happen quickly around here. They say this program works slowly, but in a real sense, well, it's like this. On the 14th of August, 1966, I was a drunk, and on the 15th, I was not a drunk, and I haven't been a drunk since then, and I think that is rather brisk movement. That is just kind of, it's sort of like when you drop your the difficulty is never in the task, it's always in the objections. And I had a big objection to being sober. And when I met you and saw that you were sober, somehow or other I dropped that objection to being sober today. I didn't ever really get the feeling that I welcomed a lifetime of sobriety, but I didn't have to. I just had to drop my objection to getting through till midnight tonight without another drink. And I began to do that on a daily basis, and I didn't quite get around to dropping my objection to going to work, and it made going to work very tough. The requirement for discipline is always the requirement to handle a task that I object to handling. And I knew that it didn't have to be that way. I heard a guy named Chuck C. down in Orange County one night say, if you're working 5 days a week to get the 2 freebies at the end, that's self-robbery. The idea is to live 7 days a week. And I had the feeling that he was right and that he was living like that. And it was very attractive to me. And I don't know quite how I'm going to do that selling carpet, and I'm sniveling around and yipping and yapping and carrying on and grousing about my job. But you know what? I love these meetings. I always love these meetings. I discovered, as you already have, if you're new, that you feel better after the meeting is over than you did before. Isn't that wonderful? Jesus, that is so extraordinary. I mean, when I was new, I'd go to the meeting, and I'd think, I'm going to go get a drink after this meeting is over. And then I'd be home in bed at midnight. And I'd say, God, I was going to have a drink. Oh, well. Oh, well. How the hell do you get to, oh, well, from willing to kill? I mean, the meetings did that for me. They made me feel great. I liked the meetings, and I liked the people. And now I'm 4 years sober, and I'm not that thrilled about my job, sniveling about it. Guy came up to me one night and he said, you ought to go to law school. And he talked to me at some length about it. I had not considered it. I never thought about that. And I wasn't going to even, that's so stupid. And he made me promise him, I could tell that he really was into this, and he made me promise him that I would look into that. I mean, the guy was really loving me. I wouldn't have called it that then, but that's what he was doing. And I did look into it. I found out, yeah, I could do it. I'd have to go at night. I got to work during the day. I got to pay child support, do all that stuff that crazy sponsor wanted me to do. Takes 4 years if you go at night. And I said, do you know how old I'll be in 4 years if I go to law school? And he said, how old will you be in 4 years if you don't go to law school? I said, well, I worked it out for them. They're so dumb. Marshall and I were talking about school. I'll go on back. Interesting business. That fall I was in school. Went to school. at night. Worked during the day, sold my carpets. Carpets got easier immediately. You know, it did. I dropped my objection to the carpet. And I went to meetings, I went to school. The first 3 years went by, and then the 4th year. And then I was getting ready to take the bar examination. I had to fill out an application, as everybody does, to take the bar examination. And the California State Bar Examination is a rather tough test. It takes 3 days, and you sit down and you scribble everything out you ever knew about the law. But for me, the bigger challenge was filling out the application so I could get permission to take the test. Because after I graduated from law school, I had 9 years of sobriety. But there was a little wreckage of the past to deal with. I mean, they wanted to know things on this application that were really kind of awkward, like, have you ever been arrested for anything other than a minor traffic violation? And they left 3 little lines on the damn thing, you know. I put see attached page right in there. Ever been a defendant in a civil action include dissolutions and divorces and annulments and all of that, so I put some more stuff down. They ask all the wrong questions. Just terrible. I called my sponsor. I said, you know what? I looked at my rap sheet. There's one of these arrests and convictions that isn't on the rap sheet, and they'll never put it down. I don't want to put it down. He said, oh, they're just asking for the ones you want to put down, are they? I said, no. He said, you don't have to put it down there, but you won't pass the bar exam if you don't. I said, come on. Is that some kind of karma? He said, well, you know, the way you got it wired up is this. If you wrote it all down there and they let you take the bar exam knowing everything, you could give it the best shot you have and you'd probably pass it. But if you don't put it all down there and they let you take the bar exam based on part of the information and you know that it's based on part of the information, you're going to figure they'll catch you, and why get ready? And I knew he had me. And so it took me 2 more weeks to put everything down on that, because I worked hard for 4 years. Law school was not an easy proposition. I worked my tail end off for 4 years. I found out a shocking thing. I always assumed everywhere I ever went to school, I know that if I really applied myself, I could be the best one ever. And once I had that information, I didn't have to apply myself, you know. Why bother to do it? I know how it's going to come out. Well, in law school, I gave it the best shot I had. I really worked hard that first semester, and I really worked hard that second semester and the third, and it was about halfway through law school I discovered the most shocking thing. There are better minds than mine in the city of Los Angeles. God, I hated that. I'm glad I have that information today. Keeps me getting prepared, you know. So I bundled all this information up with twine and sent it up to Sacramento, my application. They let me take the test, and I sat downtown in 1975 for 3 days in the middle of August, and with 3,000 other men and women, and about half of us passed the bar exam that year. I passed it on the first try. They didn't tell us for 4 months. They hand graded those things. And on Thanksgiving Eve in that year, I got a call from somebody who told me my name was on the list. I said, what list are you looking at there, pal? But I passed the bar. They gave me a license to practice law, which is pretty colorful because when I came here to you, the state of California would not give me a license to drive a car. And I've been doing that. And I've been doing it and having a lot of fun with it. I think that we do best when we go to lots of meetings, but I also know that we have to find a game worth playing between meetings. We do. It's important that we do that. It's important that we work out a way that we approve of to become self-supporting through our own contributions. I don't know any of us that can escape that. There's just a sense of well-being that attaches to that isn't available in any other way. And whatever it is, as long as it makes us feel great, like whether it's raising a family or running a service station or whatever it is, we all need to find that thing. And we can here. We can, Chris and I were talking today, we can have it all. I really believe that if you're new here today, whatever you want, you can have. Anything that you want, you can have. If you're willing to put your sobriety first, and if you're willing to learn how to get it for yourself. Whether it's peace of mind or a house, your dream house, it doesn't matter. As long as you don't expect somebody else to get it for you and are willing to go out and learn how to do it for yourself, you can have it here. And here's the place that we learn to do that. My sponsor used to tell an interesting story about a guy that was on a fishing boat he was living in a fishing village in Alaska. And every night at the end of the day, he'd go to a different skipper of a different boat and he'd say, "Give me a piece of fish." And they'd throw him a piece of fish and he'd go cook it someplace, and he got by that way. And one day there's a new boat in the fleet, and he went up to the new skipper and he said, "Give me a piece of fish." And the guy said, "Who are you?" And he said, "Well, I'm George." He said, "Well, why should I give you a piece of fish?" He said, "Everybody gives me a piece of fish." He said, "Really? Why?" He said, "Well, I ask them and they give it to me." He said, "I can't do it. I can't do it." He said, "Come on, Jesus. You got tuna to the gunnels there. Give me a piece of fish." He said, "I'll tell you what I could do if you want. I could bring you aboard for a season and teach you how to fish so you never have to ask for fish. But I just can't give you a piece of fish." And the guy was just like me because he said, "Hey, I don't want to be a nuisance, Just give me a piece of fish." And I did that around AA. Give me a piece. Don't tell me I have to write an inventory. Don't tell me I have to list my phone number and my right name. Don't tell me I have to pay child support. Don't tell me I have to make amends, pay the money back. The answer I got was, they don't want your money, they just want their own back. It took me 12 years to pay the money back. And I owed a lot of money, but not that much. But I got this notion that I couldn't afford it. And if you think you can't afford it, guess what? You can't. You keep just enough money out of your life so you can be right about that. It's interesting. So I was 12 years. We all have a schedule about how quick we're going to do these things. I don't want to get well too fast. I don't want to get involved in an overkill, for God's sake. You know how long it takes to write an inventory? It takes 2 years and an evening. Once in a while, I look at this book called Alcoholics Anonymous. You know what it says in there about step 9? It took me 12 years to pay that guy his $14,000 back. You know what it says in that book about that? In terms of the timing of making amends to people? It says you may want to, it says you don't have to do it right away. It says you may want to put this step off for 2 or 3 weeks to make sure you're on the right track. 2 or 3 weeks. Don't go into the second month with it, And yet we all have this schedule about what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And it's crazy because the energy here and the power that is here is so efficient that we can move at any pace we choose. I really know that to be true. As long as we're willing to let go of some old ideas. And those old ideas are so limiting. And they're not just about drinking. They're about living. And they're about what we bring to the table. Chris and I were talking today about a guy that was up at my place a couple of years ago. And he was very upset because he was afraid he was going to lose his job, and he loved this job. In fact, they wanted to give him a promotion, and he couldn't take the promotion, and that's why it made him think they were going to get rid of him. He was a computer programmer, and he really was good. And the company loved him, and they paid him a pretty good salary to do that work. And now they want him to go out in the field and begin to work with the customers in the field solving their programming problems. And he loves people, and he loves that kind of work, and he loves the company, and there was a big raise attached to this, and he couldn't go do it. And I said, why not? And he was almost in tears at the frustration of it all. He said, they want me to get a haircut. I said, well, why don't you get a haircut then? What's the big deal? I mean, it was past that era when everybody had long hair, and it was just not even a fashion statement anymore, really. I said, what's with the hair? And he started talking about his rights. Now, I used to think that meant he was hard of hearing, and I'd start screaming at him if they talked like that, but I've gotten mellow in my old age, and I don't do that now. I just get curious. I mean, what would be behind that for a guy? So I said, what's up with the hair, really, just between us kids? And he finally told me, and he was almost in tears. He was so humiliated. He said, my ears are deformed. And I said, oh, God. That's why you wear long hair? He said, yeah. So we talked about it for a while, and I wondered, really, and I got curious, and I finally said, let me see your ears. And he loves me, and he trusts me, and he's kind of, and he, you know what I saw? I saw ears, just ears. So there's a mirror in my den, and pretty soon we're standing up at the mirror, and I said, look, my ears, your ears, they're about the same. I'm doing this number trying to convince this guy that his ears were not screwed up. And he finally kind of got it, you know, and he said, well, they're so big, though. God. So now we get out a ruler, and we're going like this with a guy. And he said, he finally conceded that maybe his ears weren't. I said, how does it make you feel when your ears are like that? And he got back into the emotion of it a little bit. He said, it makes me feel like nobody will ever take me seriously. I said, really? What's the logic on that? And he said, well, it'd be like a clown. I said, oh. Well, I guess if I thought my ears made me look like a clown, I wouldn't get a haircut willingly either. But I said, is it true? In reality, is it true that your ears look like that? And he said, I guess not. I said, well, when did you first get that notion? And we have a wonderful memory for emotion, and he was into the emotion, and he knew exactly when he got that. He's second grade. He's 7 years old. He comes running into the house after school, glad to see his mama. He loved his mama. She was going to give him a cookie or whatever. And she was on the phone with his aunt. And she looked at him, and he saw a funny look on her face. And she says to her sister, she said, I got to hang up now. Billy's here, and little pictures have big ears. And he's ready to lose his job because that remark was one he didn't process in a logical way, and he thought it meant that his ears were bad. And as soon as he could cover them up, he did. It's called old ideas. It's called we all have a lot of that crap that we bring to the table, and we don't even know they're old ideas. We think it's just the way that it is. I knew from the time I was in the second grade you can't trust women. You can't understand them. You can't make them happy. I knew that. I knew that. It didn't seem like an old idea to me. It's the way it is. And nobody ever proved me wrong because I made sure they didn't. You got to carefully select who you bring in your life and treat them in a certain way, and, you know, you got to do a whole number. And you got to see things that aren't there and all of that. But it's not the stuff of which great relationships are made. And when I began to discover that and see what that was, where that was putting me in terms of relationships, I knew that that had to change. Fortunately, those old ideas are not that hard to give up, because after a while, even those ones we really hang on to don't seem that safe. And we grow and we grow and we move and we develop. And so this program is not so much about alcohol or quitting drinking. It's about learning to live our lives in such a way that we don't have to start again. It's about developing a relationship with the God that has held me in the hollow of his hand for 24 years. I cannot fall out. I can climb out, but I can't fall out. I cannot deny any longer the existence of that God and the power of his love in my life. I can tell you this, if my mother were here tonight, she would say, "What will you do when you meet your Maker?" And I would say, I used to think I'd say, I'll tell him I quit drinking. But there's a better answer to that. What will you do when you meet your Maker? And the answer is easy. We already met. I met him 24 years ago. Those guys in that club in Glendale introduced us. And we were getting to be friends. I meet him every day. He's here tonight. If you're new here, hang around. This is really an amazing thing. Thanks.
Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.